6 months later, Maria stood in a courthouse hallway holding 18-month-old Emma while lawyers discussed final custody arrangements. The past half year had been a whirlwind of legal meetings, depositions, and investigations that had turned the Thompson mansion into a battlefield. True to her word, Mrs. Thompson had fought viciously. She had hired expensive lawyers and private investigators, attempting to dig up dirt on both Maria and her husband. She had accused Maria of everything from theft to inappropriate conduct, forcing Maria to endure humiliating questioning and background checks. But every investigation had only strengthened Maria's credibility and revealed more evidence of Mrs. Thompson's neglect. The custody battle had been brutal and public. Society pages that once celebrated Catherine Thompson's charity work now detailed her failures as a mother. Child welfare services had conducted multiple home visits, interviewing Maria extensively about Emma's daily care and routines. Each visit had reinforced what everyone could see. Emma thrived under Maria's care and showed clear anxiety when separated from her for extended periods. Mr. Thompson had kept his word about everything. Maria's salary had been tripled, she had her own lawyer funded by Mr. Thompson, and most importantly, she had been given a formal contract that protected her position regardless of the custody outcome. But more than that, she had watched him transform from an absent businessman into a devoted father. During the legal proceedings, Mr. Thompson had restructured his entire business to allow him to work from home most days. He had learned to change diapers, make bottles, and read bedtime stories. He and Maria had developed a partnership in caring for Emma that was based on mutual respect and shared love for the little girl. Emma had grown into a bright, happy toddler who called Maria Mama Maria and reached for her father with squeals of delight whenever he came home. She was walking now, chattering in a mixture of English and Spanish, and had a laugh that could light up any room. The contrast between this confident, joyful child and the quiet, anxious baby Maria had first cared for was remarkable. The judge's decision had been unanimous in Mr. Thompson's favor. Mrs. Thompson was granted supervised visitation rights, but Emma would live primarily with her father. The judge had been particularly swayed by Maria's detailed logs of Emma's care, and by the obvious bond between the child and both her father and Maria. But the real victory had come 3 months ago, when Mr. Thompson had made an unexpected proposal that changed everything. "Maria," he had said one evening after they had put Emma to bed, "I have something important to ask you, and I want you to think carefully before you answer." They were sitting in the living room, the same formal space where Mrs. Thompson had tried to fire Maria a year earlier. But now it felt warm and comfortable, filled with Emma's toys and the evidence of a family that actually lived there. "I want to adopt you as Emma's legal guardian," he had continued, "not just as her caregiver, but as her second parent. If anything ever happens to me, I want to know that Emma will stay with the person who loves her most." Maria had been speechless. Legal guardianship would give her rights and responsibilities that went far beyond being an employee. It would make her Emma's mother in the eyes of the law. "Sir, I don't understand."
"Why would you do that?"
"Because you've been more of a mother to Emma than Catherine ever was. Because Emma loves you unconditionally and you've proven that you'll always put her needs first. Because I trust you with the most precious thing in my life." The legal process had been complex, requiring background checks, home studies, and court appearances. But today, as they waited for the final paperwork to be completed, Maria Santos was about to become Emma Thompson's legal guardian and adoptive mother. Emma toddled over to where Maria was sitting and climbed into her lap, babbling happily about the pictures on the courthouse walls. She had no idea that this was one of the most important days of her young life, but she radiated the confidence and security of a child who had never doubted that she was loved. "Mama Maria hungry," Emma announced, patting Maria's face with her tiny hands. "I know, sweetheart. We'll get lunch soon," Maria replied, marveling at how natural it felt to be called Mama by this beautiful little girl. Mr. Thompson, now just Richard to Maria, sat down beside them. The formal barriers between employer and employee had long since dissolved, replaced by a partnership based on their shared commitment to Emma's well-being. "Are you nervous?" he asked quietly. "Terrified," Maria admitted. "A year ago I was just trying to keep my job as a maid. Now I'm about to become the legal mother of a billionaire's daughter. It doesn't seem real." "You've been her real mother all along, Maria. This just makes it official." The lawyer emerged from the courtroom with a smile and a folder full of documents. "Congratulations," she said. "The adoption is final. Maria Santos is now Emma Thompson's legal guardian and adoptive mother." As they walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sunshine, Maria reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with a sick baby, a hard floor, and a decision to put love before rules. It had nearly cost her everything, but instead, it had given her more than she had ever dreamed possible. Emma was chattering excitedly in her stroller, pointing at birds and cars and anything else that caught her attention. She was growing up bilingual, speaking Spanish with Maria and English with her father, and she had the confidence of a child who knew she was cherished by the two most important people in her world. Mrs. Thompson had moved to Europe after the divorce, starting a new life far from the scandal of the custody battle. She sent expensive gifts for Emma's birthday and holidays, but she had never asked for additional visitation time. It seemed that losing the battle had finally forced her to admit that motherhood wasn't a role she was suited for. "What are you thinking about?" Richard asked as they walked to their car. "I'm thinking about that night when I slept on the floor with Emma," Maria replied. "I was so scared that I would lose my job, that Mrs. Thompson would find out and fire me. I never imagined it would lead to this. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that feel the most dangerous at the time," Richard said. "You risked everything for Emma that night, and it changed all of our lives for the better." As they drove home to the mansion that was now truly Emma's home, Maria thought about her mother, who had lived to see her daughter become the legal guardian of a beautiful little girl. Her mother had passed away peacefully 6 months ago, but not before holding Emma and telling Maria how proud she was of the woman she had raised. The mansion looked different now. It was still elegant and expensive, but it was also warm and lived in. Emma's artwork decorated the refrigerator, toys were scattered throughout the rooms, and every space reflected the presence of a family that actually spent time together. That evening, as Maria tucked Emma into her crib, the little girl reached up and patted her face. "Love you, Mama Maria," she said in her sweet, sleepy voice. "I love you too, mi niña," Maria whispered back, her heart overflowing with gratitude for the incredible gift she had been given. As she turned off the nursery light, Maria remembered the scared young woman who had once slept on this very floor with a sick baby in her arms. That woman had been just trying to comfort a crying child, but she had ended up finding her own family, her own purpose, and her own happy ending. Sometimes love really was enough to change everything. Monday morning arrived like a storm. Maria woke early and prepared herself for what she knew would be one of the most difficult days of her life. She dressed carefully in her best uniform and spent extra time with Emma, knowing that their peaceful routines were about to be shattered by conflict. At exactly 9 o'clock, as Maria was feeding Emma breakfast in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Through the window, she could see a middle-aged woman with graying hair standing on the front porch, carrying a small suitcase. This had to be Mrs. Thompson's replacement choice. Mrs. Thompson appeared in the kitchen doorway, dressed impeccably as always, her face showing satisfaction at what she believed would be the resolution of her household problems. "Maria, please answer the door. That will be Mrs. Patterson, who will be taking over your duties." Before Maria could respond, Mr. Thompson entered the kitchen from the opposite doorway. He was dressed in a sharp business suit, but his expression was harder than Maria had ever seen it. "Actually, Catherine, that won't be necessary. Mrs. Patterson's services will not be required." The tension in the room immediately became suffocating. Mrs. Thompson's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "Excuse me? We discussed this, Richard. I've made my decision about the household staff, and I've made mine." Mr. Thompson's voice was calm but firm. "Maria will be staying. In fact, her position is being expanded and her salary increased. She now works directly for me, not for you." The silence that followed was broken only by Emma's happy babbling as she played with her breakfast. Mrs. Thompson's eyes darted between her husband and Maria, clearly trying to process this unexpected development. "You can't be serious, Richard. You're undermining my authority in my own home over a maid? This isn't about authority, Catherine. It's about what's best for Emma. And what's best for Emma is having someone who actually cares about her well-being taking care of her daily needs." Mrs. Thompson's composure finally cracked. "How dare you imply that I don't care about my own daughter? I am her mother. Being a mother requires more than just giving birth, Catherine. When was the last time you fed Emma? When was the last time you changed her diaper or put her to bed? When was the last time you stayed home with her when she was sick instead of going to a party? Each question hit like a physical blow, and Maria watched Mrs. Thompson's face cycle through anger, hurt, and finally a cold fury that was more frightening than her shouting. If you think you can turn my own household staff against me, you're mistaken. Mrs. Thompson turned to Maria with ice in her eyes. You can pack your things and leave immediately. I don't care what my husband promised you. But Mr. Thompson stepped between them. Maria isn't going anywhere. And if you try to force her out, Catherine, you'll find yourself facing some very uncomfortable questions about your fitness as a mother. The threat hung in the air like a sword. Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened as she realized what her husband was implying. You wouldn't dare try me. Mr. Thompson's voice was quiet but deadly serious. I've been documenting everything, Catherine. Your absences, your lack of involvement with Emma, your priorities. I have 3 months of evidence showing that Maria provides more maternal care to our daughter than you do. Maria felt like she was witnessing the complete breakdown of a marriage. Emma, sensing the tension in the room, started to cry, and Maria instinctively reached for her. Both parents watched as Emma immediately calmed down in Maria's arms. The contrast with her distress at their arguing impossible to ignore. This is about her, isn't it? Mrs. Thompson's voice was now cold and calculating as she stared at Maria. You're having an affair. With the help. The accusation was so shocking and untrue that Maria gasped. Audibly. Mr. Thompson's face went dark with anger. Don't you dare try to make this about something it's not, Catherine. This is about you neglecting our daughter and Maria being the only person in this house who consistently puts Emma's needs first. Mrs. Thompson laughed bitterly. Oh, please. You expect me to believe that you're willing to destroy our marriage over housekeeping arrangements? There's something going on between you two, and I'm going to prove it. The only thing going on is that I finally opened my eyes to what kind of mother you really are. Mr. Thompson's voice was filled with disgust. You're so focused on your social climbing and your image that you can't even see your own daughter as a person. She's just another accessory to you. At that moment, the doorbell rang again and they could hear Mrs. Patterson calling from the front porch. The reality of the situation suddenly seemed to hit Mrs. Thompson. Her carefully planned solution was falling apart, and her husband was openly challenging her authority. I'll get the door, Mr. Thompson said. I need to explain to Mrs. Patterson that there's been a change of plans and compensate her for her time. After he left, Mrs. Thompson and Maria stood in uncomfortable silence. Emma had stopped crying and was now reaching for one of her toys on the high chair tray. The normalcy of the baby's behavior contrasted sharply with the chaos swirling around her. You think you're very clever, don't you? Mrs. Thompson's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried a menace that made Maria's skin crawl. You've managed to manipulate my husband into believing your sob story about caring for Emma. Maria found her voice, though it trembled slightly. I'm not manipulating anyone, ma'am. I just want what's best for Emma. What's best for Emma is having a mother who can provide her with the social connections and educational opportunities that money can buy. Not some uneducated girl from the wrong side of town who thinks love is enough. The words stung because they contained a grain of truth that Maria had always worried about. She couldn't give Emma the advantages that came with wealth and social position. But she could give her something that Mrs. Thompson seemed incapable of providing. Maybe love isn't enough for everything, Maria said quietly. But it's the foundation that everything else should be built on. Emma deserves to know that she's wanted and cherished, not just provided for. Mrs. Thompson stared at her for a long moment, and Maria thought she saw something vulnerable flicker in those cold blue eyes, before it was replaced by hardened resolve. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, Maria. Richard thinks he can use you to hurt me, but this isn't over. Not by a long shot. As Mrs. Thompson swept out of the kitchen, her high heels clicking angrily against the marble floor, Maria sank into a chair and held Emma close. The baby looked up at her with those trusting green eyes, completely unaware that she had just become the center of a war between her parents. Maria knew that Mrs. Thompson's threat wasn't empty. The woman had connections, resources, and a ruthless determination to maintain her position. The battle for Emma's future was just beginning, and Maria had just made herself a primary target. But as Emma grabbed her finger and smiled, Maria felt her resolve strengthen. Some fights were worth any risk, and this little girl was definitely worth fighting for. Maria's heart pounded as she looked at Mr. Thompson's serious expression. "What kind of risk, sir?" Mr. Thompson stood up carefully, making sure not to wake Emma, and placed her gently in her crib. He turned back to Maria with a determined look in his eyes. "I'm going to file for divorce, Maria, and I'm going to fight for full custody of Emma." The words hung in the air between them like a bombshell. Maria felt her knees go weak, and she had to grip the back of the rocking chair for support. "Sir, I don't think I should be hearing this. You should hear it because it affects you directly." Mr. Thompson moved closer, his voice low and urgent. "I need someone to help me document Emma's care. Someone who can testify about what really goes on in this house when I'm traveling. More importantly, if I win custody, I'll need someone I trust to help me raise my daughter." Maria's mind raced with the implications of what he was suggesting. "Sir, I'm just the maid. No court would take my word seriously." "You're not just the maid, Maria. You're the person who knows Emma better than anyone else in this house, including her own mother. You're the one who was here when she was sick, who comforts her when she cries, who spends every day caring for her needs. That makes you the most important witness I could have." The idea was both terrifying and hopeful. Maria thought about Emma's future, about what would happen if she grew up with a mother who saw her as a burden and a father who was always traveling. Then she thought about the risk to herself. If Mr. Thompson lost the custody battle, Mrs. Thompson would make sure Maria never worked in this city again. "What exactly are you asking me to do, sir?" "I'm asking you to document everything. Keep a detailed record of Emma's daily routine, her care, her interactions with both Catherine and myself. I'm also asking you to stay, despite Catherine's decision to fire you. I'll handle my wife. Sir, Mrs. Thompson has already hired a replacement. She's starting Monday. Let me worry about that." Mr. Thompson's voice was firm with determination. "Maria, I know this is a lot to ask. I know it puts you in a difficult position, but I truly believe it's what's best for Emma. She needs stability, love, and consistent care. She needs someone who puts her well-being above social appearances and charity events." Maria looked down at sleeping Emma, so peaceful and innocent, unaware that her entire world was about to change. "Why me, sir? You could hire professionals, people with credentials and experience in legal matters. Because Emma trusts you. Because you've already proven that you'll put her needs first, even when it means breaking rules or sleeping on a hard floor. Because you're not doing this for money or advancement. You're doing it because you genuinely care about my daughter." The weight of the decision pressed down on Maria's shoulders. She thought about her sick mother back home, about the medications they couldn't afford if she lost this job. But she also thought about Emma, who deserved so much better than the cold, loveless environment she was growing up in. "If I agree to this, what happens to my position here? Mrs. Thompson made it very clear that I'm fired. You'll continue working here, but officially you'll be working directly for me, not for Catherine. Your salary will be doubled, and you'll have a formal contract that protects your position. You'll also have money set aside for legal protection if Catherine tries to retaliate against you." The offer was more generous than Maria had ever dreamed possible, but she knew it came with enormous risks. "And if you lose the custody case?" Mr. Thompson's expression grew grave. "If I lose, you'll have enough money to start over anywhere you want. I'll provide excellent references and help you find a new position. But Maria, I don't intend to lose, not when my daughter's happiness is at stake." Over the next hour, Mr. Thompson explained his plan in detail. He had already consulted with lawyers and had been quietly gathering evidence of Catherine's neglect for weeks. He had suspected that his wife's lack of interest in Emma went beyond normal postpartum adjustment. But seeing Maria sleeping on the floor with his sick daughter had been the final proof he needed. "I travel so much because I thought Catherine needed space to bond with Emma," he admitted. "I thought my presence was somehow interfering with their relationship. But I was wrong. Catherine has no interest in being a mother. She sees Emma as an obligation, not a joy." Maria listened carefully as he outlined the legal strategy. She would need to keep detailed daily logs of Emma's care, noting who fed her, changed her, played with her, and comforted her when she cried. She would document Mrs. Thompson's absences and her interactions with Emma when she was present. Most importantly, she would need to be prepared to testify about what she had witnessed. "Sir, what about the new maid Mrs. Thompson hired? I'll handle that situation tomorrow. Catherine may control the household staff, but I control the finances. The new woman will be compensated for her time and told that the position is no longer available. That evening, Maria called her mother from her room, speaking in Spanish to ensure privacy. She explained the situation as best she could without revealing too many details about the family's personal business. "Mija, this sounds very dangerous," her mother said, her voice weak but concerned. "Rich people's problems can destroy poor people's lives. But Mama, this baby needs someone to fight for her. She's so little, and she has no one else who truly cares about her well-being." Her mother was quiet for a long moment. "You have a good heart, Maria. Sometimes that's a blessing and sometimes it's a curse. But if you believe this is right, then I trust your judgment." After hanging up, Maria sat by her small window, looking out at the beautifully manicured grounds of the estate. Tomorrow everything would change. Mrs. Thompson would discover that her plans had been overruled by her husband. The new maid would be sent away, and Maria would begin a role that went far beyond cleaning and cooking. She thought about Emma, sleeping peacefully in her crib down the hall, unaware that several adults were about to engage in a battle for her future. Maria had grown up with very little, but she had always been surrounded by love. Emma had everything money could buy, but she was starving for the one thing that couldn't be purchased. The next morning would bring confrontation, anger, and the beginning of a legal battle that would determine not just Emma's future, but Maria's as well. But as Maria finally drifted off to sleep, she felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. For the first time in her life, she was going to fight for something truly important. She was going to fight for love to triumph over money, for a child's well-being to matter more than social status, and for the right of every baby to be cherished and protected. It was a battle worth risking everything for. 3 days passed in an atmosphere of uncomfortable silence. Mrs. Thompson barely spoke to Maria beyond giving her daily instructions, and Mr. Thompson had locked himself in his home office, emerging only for meals and to spend brief moments with Emma. The tension in the house was so thick that even the other staff members seemed nervous and whispered among themselves. Maria tried to maintain her normal routine with Emma, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking on thin ice. Every time Mrs. Thompson looked at her, Maria saw calculation in those cold blue eyes, as if she were planning something. The uncertainty was eating away at Maria's peace of mind, especially since she had grown so attached to Emma. On Thursday afternoon, while Emma napped in her crib, Maria was dusting the library when she overheard a phone conversation that made her blood run cold. Mrs. Thompson was in the adjacent sitting room, speaking in hushed tones to someone on the phone. "Yes, I need to find a replacement as soon as possible," Mrs. Thompson was saying. "Someone older, more experienced, who understands proper boundaries. The current girl has become too attached to the baby, and it's creating problems in the household." Maria's hands trembled as she continued dusting the same bookshelf, straining to hear more. "I don't care about references or experience with children. I need someone who will do their job without getting emotionally involved. Yes, I understand it will cost more. Money isn't an issue." The conversation continued for several more minutes, with Mrs. Thompson describing the position and asking about availability. When she finally hung up, Maria felt sick to her stomach. She was going to be fired, and Emma would be left with a stranger who was specifically chosen for her lack of emotional connection to children. That evening, after putting Emma to bed, Maria sat in her small room on the 3rd floor and considered her options. She could start looking for another job immediately, but finding something that paid as well as this position would be nearly impossible. More importantly, leaving would mean abandoning Emma to a mother who saw her as an inconvenience and a father who, despite his love for his daughter, was rarely home. The next morning, Maria's worst fears were confirmed. Mrs. Thompson called her into the formal living room, a space so pristine and uncomfortable that it was clearly only used for serious conversations. Mrs. Thompson sat in a high-backed chair like a queen holding court, while Maria stood nervously in front of her. "Maria, I've been thinking about your position here," Mrs. Thompson began, her voice cold and businesslike. "I feel that the arrangement we currently have is not working out as well as I had hoped." Maria's heart sank, but she tried to keep her expression neutral. "May I ask what I've done wrong, ma'am?" "It's not about doing anything wrong per se. It's about maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. You've become too emotionally invested in Emma's care, and that's creating complications for the family." I thought caring for Emma was part of my job. Ma'am, Mrs. Thompson's eyes flashed with irritation. Caring for her, yes, but not becoming so attached that you think you know what's best for her, better than her own mother. Sleeping on the floor with her, for instance, was completely inappropriate. Maria felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. Emma was sick, ma'am. She needed comfort. Emma needed proper medical attention, which you should have arranged instead of playing nursemaid. Mrs. Thompson stood up, clearly wanting to end the conversation. I found a replacement who will be starting on Monday. You have until Sunday to pack your things and leave. The words hit Maria like a physical blow. Sunday was only 2 days away. Ma'am, please, I need this job. My mother is sick and I send money home to help pay for her medications. If you're not satisfied with my work, I can improve. I can follow any rules you set. For a moment, something that might have been sympathy flickered across Mrs. Thompson's face, but it disappeared quickly. I'm sorry, Maria, but my decision is final. You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay, which is more than generous considering the circumstances. As Maria left the living room, her mind was racing. 2 weeks' pay wouldn't last long, especially with her mother's medical bills, but more than her own financial situation. She was heartbroken at the thought of leaving Emma. The baby had become like family to her, and she couldn't bear the idea of Emma waking up one day to find that Maria had simply disappeared from her life. That afternoon, while Mrs. Thompson was at another of her social events, Maria was surprised to find Mr. Thompson in the nursery. He was sitting in the rocking chair holding Emma and reading to her from a children's book. The sight of this powerful businessman who controlled million-dollar companies patiently reading Goodnight Moon to his baby daughter was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Sir? Maria knocked softly on the doorframe. I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Thompson looked up and Maria could see the stress and exhaustion in his eyes. Come in, Maria. I was hoping to see you. How are you doing? Maria hesitated, unsure how much he knew about his wife's decision. I'm fine, sir. Is there anything you need? Actually, there is something I need to discuss with you. He closed the book and shifted Emma to a more comfortable position. Catherine told me about her decision to let you go. I want you to know that I completely disagree with it. Relief flooded through Maria. If Mr. Thompson disagreed, perhaps there was still hope. Thank you, sir. That means a lot to me. I've been watching you with Emma these past few days, and it's clear to me that you genuinely care about her well-being. You're not just doing a job. You're providing something she desperately needs. She's a wonderful baby, sir. I love taking care of her. Mr. Thompson was quiet for a moment, studying his daughter's face. Maria, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you think Emma is happy? The question caught Maria off guard, but she knew she had to tell the truth. She's a content baby most of the time, sir, but she craves affection and attention. All babies do. She lights up when people spend time with her and play with her. And how often does my wife spend time playing with Emma? Maria felt trapped between honesty and loyalty to her employer. Mrs. Thompson is very busy, sir. That's not what I asked. His voice was gentle but insistent. I need to know the truth about my daughter's daily life. Taking a deep breath, Maria made the decision to be completely honest. Not very often, sir. Mrs. Thompson usually checks on Emma in the morning and sometimes before bed, but most of the day-to-day care falls to me or the other staff. Mr. Thompson closed his eyes as if the words caused him physical pain. And how does Emma react when her mother does spend time with her? She seems confused sometimes, sir. Like she's not sure who Mrs. Thompson is. Babies need consistency and routine to feel secure. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Mr. Thompson looked down at Emma, who was starting to fall asleep in his arms, completely trusting and peaceful. Maria, I want to make you an offer, he said finally. But first I need to know if you're willing to take a significant risk. The next morning arrived with an uncomfortable tension that seemed to fill every corner of the mansion. Maria had barely slept after Mr. Thompson left the nursery around 4 a.m. He had insisted on staying with Emma for another hour, just watching his daughter sleep and asking Maria more questions about the baby's routines and preferences. Now, as Maria prepared Emma's morning bottle in the kitchen, she could hear raised voices coming from the master bedroom upstairs. Mrs. Thompson had returned from her charity event at dawn, and it was clear that her husband was having a serious conversation with her about the previous night's events. Emma sat in her high chair, babbling happily and reaching for the colorful toys Maria had arranged on the tray. The baby seemed completely unaware of the storm brewing above them. Maria tried to focus on Emma's cheerful sounds rather than the angry voices drifting down from upstairs. How could you leave when Emma was sick? Mr. Thompson's voice carried clearly through the mansion's high ceilings. Maria tried not to listen, but the words were impossible to ignore. She wasn't that sick, Richard. The girl was being dramatic. It's what they do to get attention. Mrs. Thompson's response was cold and dismissive, and Maria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. She had a fever, Catherine. Our 6-month-old daughter had a fever, and you left her with the maid to go to a party. It wasn't a party. It was an important charity fundraiser. The kind of event that maintains our family's social standing. Something you would understand if you were ever home. Maria focused intently on warming Emma's bottle, trying to block out the argument. She had grown up in a household where her parents argued frequently about money and work, and she knew how painful it was for children to hear their parents fight, even when they were too young to understand the words. Emma seemed to sense the tension in the air and started to fuss. Maria quickly lifted her from the high chair and held her close, humming softly to calm her down. The baby's green eyes looked up at Maria with complete trust, and Maria felt a fierce protective instinct surge through her. The argument upstairs grew louder, and Maria decided to take Emma outside to the garden. The mansion's backyard was beautifully landscaped with rose bushes and a small fountain that Emma loved to watch. It would be peaceful there, away from the harsh words echoing through the house. As they walked through the French doors onto the stone patio, Maria was surprised to see Mr. Thompson sitting on a bench near the fountain. He had changed out of his expensive suit and was wearing jeans and a simple blue shirt. He looked younger and more approachable, but also deeply troubled. "Good morning, Maria," he said, standing up as they approached. "How is Emma feeling today?" "Much better, sir. Her fever is completely gone, and she slept well after you left last night." Maria bounced Emma gently, and the baby gave her father a curious look. "May I hold her?" The question was asked with such hesitancy that Maria's heart ached for him. This was his own daughter, and he was asking permission from the maid to hold her. "Of course, sir. She's your daughter." Maria carefully transferred Emma to her father's arms, showing him how to support her head and back. Emma studied her father's face with serious concentration, as if trying to remember who he was. After a moment, she reached out and grabbed his nose, giggling when he made a surprised expression. The sound of his daughter's laughter seemed to transform Mr. Thompson's entire demeanor. "She's beautiful," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "She looks like you, Catherine, but she has my mother's eyes." Maria turned to see Mrs. Thompson standing in the doorway, still wearing her evening gown from the night before. Her perfectly styled hair was slightly disheveled and her makeup was smudged. She looked like a woman who had been crying, though her expression remained cold. "Richard, we need to talk about this situation." Mrs. Thompson's voice was controlled, but Maria could hear the underlying anger. "It's completely inappropriate for the help to be sleeping with our child. The help has a name, Catherine. Her name is Maria, and she was caring for our sick daughter while you were out socializing." Mr. Thompson's voice was steady, but Maria could sense his growing frustration. "Don't lecture me about parenting, Richard. You're never here. You have no idea what it's like to manage this household and raise a child." Maria felt extremely uncomfortable being in the middle of this family argument. She started to back away toward the house, but Mr. Thompson stopped her. "Maria, please stay. This concerns you too." He turned back to his wife. "Catherine, when was the last time you fed Emma? When was the last time you changed her diaper or put her to bed?" Mrs. Thompson's face flushed with anger. "That's what we pay the staff for, Richard. I have other responsibilities." "What responsibilities?" Mr. Thompson's voice rose slightly. "Shopping? Charity luncheons? Hair appointments? When did those things become more important than our daughter? How dare you minimize my contributions to this family? I maintain our social connections, our reputation in the community. That's important for your business, whether you want to admit it or not." Maria watched this exchange with growing discomfort. Emma began to fuss, clearly picking up on the tension around her. Without thinking, Maria reached out to take the baby back, and Mr. Thompson handed her over gratefully. "Look at that," Mr. Thompson said, his voice suddenly quiet. Emma calms down immediately when Maria holds her. She knows who actually cares for her. The statement hung in the air like an accusation. Mrs. Thompson's face went pale, and for a moment, Maria saw something that might have been hurt flash across her features before it was replaced by anger. If you're so concerned about Emma's care, then perhaps you should stay home more often instead of traveling constantly for your precious business empire. Mrs. Thompson's voice was sharp with sarcasm. Maybe I should, Mr. Thompson replied, surprising everyone, including himself. Maybe it's time I started putting my family first. The silence that followed was broken only by Emma's soft babbling as she played with Maria's necklace. Maria felt like an intruder in this family crisis, but she also felt protective of Emma, who deserved better than being used as a weapon in her parents' arguments. "Sir, ma'am," Maria said quietly, "perhaps Emma and I should go inside. She needs her morning nap." Both parents looked at her as if they had forgotten she was there. Mrs. Thompson's expression was unreadable, while Mr. Thompson looked grateful for Maria's attempt to defuse the situation. "Yes, that's probably best," Mr. Thompson said. "Thank you, Maria." As Maria walked back toward the house with Emma, she heard Mrs. Thompson's voice behind her, quieter now but still cold. "We need to discuss Maria's position in this household, Richard. Things cannot continue as they are." Maria's blood ran cold. She knew that voice, the tone Mrs. Thompson used when she was about to make a decision that someone wouldn't like. As she climbed the stairs to the nursery, Maria realized that her job and her ability to care for Emma might be in serious jeopardy. The sound of footsteps echoed through the marble hallway, growing louder as they approached the nursery. Maria's eyes snapped open, her heart racing as she realized someone was coming. The grandfather clock in the distance chimed 3 times, confirming it was 3 in the morning. Mrs. Thompson wasn't supposed to be back until much later. Maria carefully lifted her head, trying not to disturb Emma, who was still sleeping peacefully against her chest. The baby's fever had completely broken and her breathing was calm and steady. The footsteps stopped right outside the nursery door and Maria held her breath, preparing herself for the worst. But the voice that came through the door wasn't Mrs. Thompson's sharp tone. It was deeper, masculine, and unfamiliar. "Emma, Daddy's home, sweetheart." The door handle turned slowly, and Maria realized with growing panic that it must be Mr. Thompson. Home early from his business trip. She had never actually met Emma's father face to face. He was always traveling when she was working, and Mrs. Thompson had made it clear that the staff should make themselves invisible when he was around. All Maria knew about him was that he was incredibly wealthy, owned multiple businesses, and according to the other staff, was nothing like his cold wife. The door opened, and a tall figure stepped into the moonlit nursery. Maria could see his silhouette against the hallway light, but his face remained in shadow. He moved quietly toward the crib, clearly expecting to find his daughter sleeping there. When he reached the empty crib, he stopped abruptly. "Emma?" His voice carried a note of concern as he looked around the room. That's when he noticed the figure on the floor beside the crib. Maria felt her throat go dry as his gaze fell on her. She was trapped lying on the floor in her nightgown with his baby in her arms. There was no way to explain this that wouldn't sound completely inappropriate. Mr. Thompson stepped closer, and Maria could finally see his face in the dim light filtering through the windows. He was younger than she had expected, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair and concerned brown eyes. He didn't look angry yet, just confused and worried about his daughter. "Who are you?" he asked quietly, clearly trying not to wake the baby. "And why is Emma on the floor?" Maria's voice came out as barely a whisper. "I'm Maria, sir, the maid. Emma was sick tonight, running a fever, and she wouldn't stop crying unless I held her. I thought she needed the comfort." She felt tears threatening to spill over as she realized how this must look to him. Instead of the explosion of anger she expected, Mr. Thompson knelt down beside them. In the soft light, Maria could see the exhaustion on his face, as if he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Is she okay now?" he asked, reaching out to gently touch Emma's forehead. "Yes, sir. Her fever broke about an hour ago. She's been sleeping peacefully since then." Maria started to sit up, preparing to hand Emma over to her father, but he held up his hand to stop her. "Don't wake her. She looks comfortable." He settled down on the floor beside Maria, his expensive suit wrinkling against the carpet. "You said she was sick? Was she seen by a doctor?" Maria shook her head, feeling ashamed. "Mrs. Thompson was at an event and I didn't have permission to call anyone. I just tried to comfort her the best I could. She expected him to scold her for not following proper procedures, but instead, She saw something that looked like pain flash across his face. My wife was at an event while our daughter was sick. His voice was quiet, but Maria could hear the underlying anger, though it didn't seem directed at her. And she left you to handle it alone? Maria didn't know how to respond. She couldn't speak badly about Mrs. Thompson, even though everything he was suggesting was true. I just did what I thought was best for Emma, sir. Mr. Thompson was quiet for a long moment, studying his sleeping daughter. What's your full name, Maria? Maria Santos, sir. How long have you been working here, Maria? 3 months, sir. And in those 3 months, how often has my wife left you alone with Emma? His questions were gentle but probing, and Maria sensed that he was learning things about his own household that disturbed him. Maria hesitated, unsure how much truth she should reveal. Mrs. Thompson is very busy, sir. She has many social obligations. That's not what I asked. His tone was firmer now, but not unkind. How often are you alone with my daughter? The truth tumbled out before Maria could stop herself. Most days, sir. Mrs. Thompson usually leaves after breakfast and doesn't return until evening. Sometimes she's gone for several days at a time. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Maria watched as Mr. Thompson processed this information, his jaw tightening with what she assumed was anger. She braced herself for his fury, expecting him to blame her for overstepping her boundaries or for speaking poorly of his wife. Instead, he surprised her by gently stroking Emma's hair. Tell me about my daughter, Maria. What is she like? What does she enjoy? The question caught Maria off guard. Sir, I travel constantly for work. I'm rarely home. I want to know about Emma from someone who actually spends time with her. His voice carried a sadness that made Maria's heart ache. Despite her fear, Maria found herself opening up. She's very smart, sir. She loves music, especially when I sing to her in Spanish. She's starting to recognize faces and smiles when she sees people she knows. She's curious about everything and loves to touch different textures. She's also very sensitive to emotions. If someone around her is upset, she seems to sense it. As Maria spoke, she watched Mr. Thompson's face transform. The businessman's mask fell away, replaced by the expression of a father who was hungry for knowledge about his own child. It broke Maria's heart to realize that this man knew so little about his daughter's daily life. She sounds wonderful, he said softly. Does she seem happy? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. Maria looked down at Emma's peaceful face, thinking about all the times she had seen the baby crying for her mother, only to be handed off to Maria or another staff member. She's a good baby. Sir, but... Maria stopped herself, realizing she was about to cross a line. But what? She craves attention and affection, sir. All babies do. She lights up when people talk to her and play with her. Maria chose her words carefully, trying to convey the truth without directly criticizing Mrs. Thompson. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly, seeming to understand what Maria wasn't saying directly. And you provide that for her? I try, sir. I know I'm just the maid, but I care about Emma. She's a special little girl. You're not just the maid, Maria. You're the person who was here when my daughter was sick, who comforted her when she needed it, who sleeps on the floor to make sure she feels safe. His voice was filled with an emotion Maria couldn't quite identify. That makes you much more than just a maid. Maria Santos wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished cleaning the last of the crystal glasses in the massive kitchen. The Thompson mansion felt like a palace compared to the tiny apartment she shared with her sick mother back in the city. Every surface gleamed with expensive marble, and the refrigerator alone was bigger than her entire kitchen at home. She had been working as a live-in maid for the Thompson family for 3 months now. The pay was good, better than anything she could find in her neighborhood, but the work was endless. Mrs. Thompson, a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and cold blue eyes, treated Maria like she was invisible most days. She would leave long lists of tasks and disappear for hours, sometimes days, leaving Maria to manage the enormous house alone. The worst part was not the cleaning or the cooking. It was taking care of little Emma, the Thompsons' 6-month-old daughter. Mrs. Thompson seemed to have no interest in her own baby. She would hand Emma to Maria the moment the child cried and walk away without looking back. Maria's heart broke every time she saw the confusion in Emma's bright green eyes, as if the baby was searching for her mother's love. Tonight was different, though. Mrs. Thompson, had gone to some charity event in the city and wouldn't be back until late. Mr. Thompson was away on one of his many business trips. He owned several companies and was rarely home, which Maria thought was strange for a man with such a young baby. The other staff had gone home for the evening, leaving Maria alone with Emma in the quiet mansion. Emma had been fussy all day. She refused her bottle, cried when Maria tried to put her down, and seemed to only calm down when Maria held her close. Maria had tried everything she could think of. She checked Emma's diaper, tried feeding her again, sang gentle lullabies in Spanish that her own mother used to sing to her. But nothing worked for long. As the clock struck midnight, Maria realized Emma might be getting sick. The baby felt warm, and her usually bright eyes looked tired and glassy. Maria's own mother had always told her that when babies were unwell, they needed extra comfort and warmth. She remembered how her mother would sleep next to her when she was sick as a child, providing the security that only human closeness could offer. The baby's nursery was beautiful, but cold. It had every expensive item a baby could need, but it lacked the warmth of love. The crib, though decorated with silk ribbons and designer bedding, seemed too big and lonely for such a small child. Maria made a decision that went against all the rules Mrs. Thompson had given her about maintaining proper boundaries. She gathered some soft blankets and pillows and made a comfortable spot on the thick carpet beside Emma's crib. If the baby needed comfort, Maria would provide it, even if it meant sleeping on the floor. She had grown up in poverty, where family members often shared beds and floors out of necessity, and she knew that sometimes love mattered more than luxury. Maria changed into her nightgown and settled down on the makeshift bed with Emma in her arms. The baby immediately relaxed against Maria's chest, her tiny fist gripping Maria's finger. For the first time all day, Emma's breathing became steady and peaceful. Maria felt a surge of protective love for this child who seemed so alone in her own home. As she lay there in the dim light filtering through the expensive curtains, Maria thought about her own childhood. Her mother had worked multiple jobs to support them, but she always made time to hold Maria when she was scared or sick. Love didn't cost money, but it was the most valuable thing a person could give. The mansion's silence was broken only by the gentle sound of Emma's breathing and the distant ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Maria stroked the baby's soft hair and whispered promises that she would always be there for her, at least as long as she worked in this house. She knew Mrs. Thompson would be furious if she found out about this arrangement, but Maria couldn't bring herself to care. Some things were more important than keeping a job. Emma stirred slightly in her sleep, and Maria adjusted her position to make sure the baby was comfortable. The floor was hard beneath the thin blankets, but Maria had slept in worse conditions. Growing up, comfort was a luxury her family couldn't afford, but they had always had each other. As the night grew deeper, Maria found herself thinking about the stark differences in this house. Every room was filled with expensive furniture and artwork, but there was no warmth, no family photos, no signs of real life being lived. It was more like a museum than a home. Emma deserved better than this cold, loveless environment, but Maria was just the maid. Her job was to clean and care for the house, not to judge the family that owned it. The baby's fever seemed to be breaking, and her breathing was more relaxed now. Maria felt relief wash over her. She had made the right choice to stay close to Emma tonight. Sometimes the most important decisions were the ones that came from the heart, not from rule books or job descriptions. Outside, rain began to fall against the tall windows, creating a gentle rhythm that seemed to lull both Maria and Emma into a peaceful state. Maria closed her eyes, keeping one hand protectively on the baby's back. She would sleep lightly, ready to respond if Emma needed anything during the night. In a few hours, Mrs. Thompson would return from her event, probably expecting to find Emma safely in her crib and Maria in her own small room on the third floor. But tonight love had overruled protocol. Tonight a baby who needed comfort had found it in the arms of someone who understood that caring for a child meant more than just following instructions. The last thing Maria remembered before drifting off to sleep was Emma's tiny hand relaxing against her chest, finally at peace. Whatever consequences tomorrow might bring, Maria knew she had done the right thing. Some rules were meant to be broken when love demanded it.